Conspiracy theories. Probably one of the most interesting parts of culture and society. When you think of them, you probably think of some deranged tinfoil-wearing lunatic at some sort of flat earth society convention. But in reality, there are conspiracy theorists everywhere. You yourself might even be one. Conspiracy thinking has become so prevalent in the modern day mindset that you may not even notice that your opinions on a certain subject are actually backed up by fake news and misleading information. Now, when you think of the 60s, what comes to mind? The Vietnam War, the Beatles, the Civil Rights Movement? How about the fake moon landing? You may not agree with that last one, but that's what millions of Americans think of when it comes to that decade. Now, I'm not here to prove that the moon landing was real, because that's already been proven, but I am here to explore the reasoning behind the rationale. There are so many different details about the moon landing that there's love to point out. They claim that during the space race, the US was in desperate need of a win, because the Soviet Union was just so far ahead of them. After all, the Soviets were the first ones to send someone into space. The conspiracy that the moon landing was fake claims that the Soviets were ahead of us in aerospace technology, but guess what we were light years ahead in? Movies. This is the main detail that I want to explore. One of the main theories about the moon landing is that Stanley Kubrick was the one that NASA hired to film the fake moon landing. I think that it's a really valid response to question why, of all people, Stanley Kubrick would be the culprit. Sure, he is one of the most influential directors of the 20th century, but why him? To answer that question, I'd like to do a deep dive into the details of his films. He has a full range of movies from Full Metal Jacket to A Clockwork Orange, but today I'm just going to focus on two of his projects, 2001: A Space Odyssey and The Shining. At first, someone could make the connection that because he worked on 2001, that's why he would have filmed the moon landing. However, that's a pretty bold assumption for just one piece of evidence. The conspiracy theory goes way deeper than that. Let's start off with the visual aspects of the footage of the moon. People have made connections between the landscape of the moon with the astronaut scenes in 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay, you need a little bit of arching of the back to come down. How far am I feet from me? Okay, you're right at the edge of the port.
Did Kubrick use the same props and technology that he used in his film that came out just the next year? But still, conspiracy theorists go even further down the rabbit hole with his movie The Shining. I'm just going to list off all of the details in the movie that theorists point to as proof of The Shining being Kubrick's fake moon landing confession. For one, the most obvious is that Danny, the main child in the movie, is wearing an Apollo 11 sweater. Other than that, the carpet throughout the hotel has this hexagonal pattern that can be compared to the landing pad. Also, in the kitchen, there's Tang in the background, a powdered beverage that astronauts drink to fulfill their vitamin requirement.
In his men's stores, we keep all the dry goods in the can. We got canned fruits and vegetables, canned fish and meat, hot and cold cereal, Post Toasters, cornflakes, sugar puffs, Rice Krispies, oatmeal, sweet peanut cream. We got a dozen jugs of black molasses. We got 60 boxes of dried milk.
How'd you like some ice cream, Doc?
A lot of conspiracists wonder why, of all drinks, Tang would be in the background. Also, the iconic Burn sisters in the movie can be representative of the Gemini space mission.
Hello, Danny. Come and play with us. Come and play with us, Danny.
On top of that, Jack, the main character in the movie, obsessively types out the phrase, "all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." The word all allegedly represents A11 or Apollo 11. Finally, the conspiracy theory that I find the most interesting is that the room number in the book is 217, but Kubrick changed it to 237, which is roughly the number of thousands of miles that the Earth is away from the moon. Now, although all of this is really intriguing, it's all just speculation. Again, the moon landing is not something in the air, it's been proven thousands of times. But what I find even more interesting than the coincidence of it all is the psychology behind it. According to Karen Douglas, a well-versed psychologist on the mind behind conspiracy theories are attempts to explain the ultimate causes of significant social and political events and circumstances with claims of secret plots by two or more powerful actors. Often, the government is the center of attention when it comes to conspiracists pointing their fingers, but really any group of power can be the target, including celebrities. And Stanley Kubrick is one of the most renowned directors in history, so it's no wonder why he would be the fall guy. But why do people immediately assume that people of power, especially in Hollywood, are wrongdoers? Why does the public see the media industry as a club of celebrities with ulterior motives? Before I go into the specifics of Hollywood, I think that it's important to note the general psychology behind conspiracy theories. One of the leading ideas in studying the mind of conspiracy theorists is the fundamental attribution error. This is the tendency of people to assume that a person's actions are attributed to the person that they are, not the situation. For instance, if a person yells at another person, they could just be having a really stressful day. However, the recipient of the yelling is probably not going to see it that way. They're probably going to look at the person yelling and think that they're always this angry. It's the same way with conspiracy theorists. People look at theorists and think about how they're demented and out of their right mind. However, a non-conspiracist probably isn't going to think about how the skeptic's history with trust and paranoia has affected their mindset. And these are things that you really have to consider when it comes to the psychology of conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories provide a consistent explanation that allows people to preserve beliefs in the face of uncertainty and contradiction. A study by Johannes Gutenberg, University of Mainz, Germany, determined that there is a moderately strong association between paranoia and conspiracy theories. In general, paranoid people assume that everyone is out to harm them, and conspiracy theorists believe that a group is out to harm society as a whole. Although there is a small difference between the two, there is still a correlation. This piece of information can be drawn back to support the point about the fundamental attribution error. Conspiracy theorists blame parties of power because they feel threatened, and that is situational, not just based on their personality. So when it comes to conspiracy theories in Hollywood, people blame celebrities because there are situational anxieties that they feel the need to be resolved. And it makes sense to them to blame members of authority. This is because conspiracy theorists are more likely to be prevalent among members of low-status groups attempting to explain their status. Lower-class members of society, along with any group, have a strong need to feel positive about the group that they belong in. It's likely for a conviction about another group to arise when one group thinks of itself as undervalued, underprivileged, or under threat. In this case, the common American feels confused about the moon landing. Thus, they blame Stanley Kubrick and NASA, people of higher power, as scammers and fakes. After looking at how psychology affects the world of conspiracy theories, I think that it's important to consider how modern media plays a role in theories, because the media also plays a huge role in Hollywood. Now, more than ever, is a time for conspiracy theories to blow up. Even I, a non-conspiracist, have found that during my time of mindlessly scrolling on social media, conspiracy theories and fake news videos have come up on my recommendation pages. I literally first found out about the fake moon landing through a TikTok trying to convince people that it was staged.
For reference, crosshairs were permanently etched into the lunar cameras, so they would have to appear on top of every image. But in this photo, a crosshair is behind a part of the lunar rover.
This situation is impossible and has to be the result of technical manipulation and doctoring of the image.
And in this photo from Apollo 11, the equipment in the foreground is covering the crosshair, not behind it. And in another from Apollo 12, the American flag is covering one crosshair, and the astronaut is covering the other. Presented with these questionable photos and videos,
It's absolutely unreal.
this that Apollo was a hoax.
You don't need to look very hard to find the dark corners of the internet that house conspiracy theory forums and threads. I mean, Reddit and Twitter, some of the most accessible social media platforms, are full of them. However, social media isn't the only place that fake news is being spread. Large news outlets have lengthy histories of falsely spreading information. Although they're not the main culprit of reporting on conspiracy theories, Fox News plays an enormous role, especially when dealing with political issues.
We reported last night on how Fox News actually has a stricter vaccine mandate than the Biden plan. And the president took note.
Even at Fox News, they require it. And I'm not being facetious when I say that, but it's interesting that they've stepped forward and done that as well.
But the Fox misinformation continues. Last night, Tucker Carlson ignored the facts about his own employer so he could spread more lies about the mandates.
Joe Biden's order forcing 100 million Americans to take the COVID shot is totally insane as a matter of public health. This whole thing's a sham. It's all fake. It's not about public health. If you can force people to get the vaccine, what can't you do?
This matters because the Fox News base overlaps significantly with the millions of unvaccinated people who are most at risk right now.
That these policies, they're not just destroying lives, they're rooted in lies, all of them. Our next guest was once a climate alarmist, but now says the entire movement is, quote, a scam. Tom Harris is the executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition. He joins me now. Tom, good to see you tonight. Now, you actually say the only way to get rid of this is to go after the science of climate change. Explain.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people will say, well, you know, Canada, for example, puts out so little greenhouse gas emissions that we shouldn't actually try to reduce it because China is double the United States. Well, the trouble is people argue that, well, yes, but we have to set an example to the world and we have to be good citizens and all that sort of thing. So they're using these arguments quite often that China's doubled the emissions of the U.S., et cetera. But the real underlying thing is that there is no climate crisis.
In recent years, topics that have a large scientific consensus have been the source of debate on these news channels. They have discussed things like vaccines and climate change, both of which have been proven time and time again. Yet, these topics find themselves up for a discussion. In a way, this is a parallel to the moon landing, because the science has been authenticated, but people still question it. The psychology of conspiracies are essential in understanding why they exist, but the kairos of media is important in understanding why they spread. So yes, it's pretty entertaining to poke fun at conspiracy theorists and their pretty atypical ideas. However, I think that it's way more important to look at the why. You can totally disagree with the skeptics that believe that the moon landing was filmed by director Stanley Kubrick and use his movies to prove their points. I do too. But you should also look into why these conspiracy theorists feel the need to resolve their fears with theories and lies. You should consider why people look to lies on social media posts and incorrect news segments like Fox as a source of relief. It's human nature to have a sense of caution when coming into contact with something new, but why do some people look towards misinformation as opposed to research? They most likely have a past of paranoia, and they don't feel like they can trust individuals of higher power. However, by using psychology, we as a society can become more active in preventing the spread of fake news and misleading information, because these seemingly funny conspiracy theories are actually just smaller puzzle pieces in the bigger picture of harmful lies.